The great alien palace was quiet, but it was not a peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind of quiet that came from fear. Servants walked fast, guards stayed tense, and no one spoke above a whisper. Everyone knew why. Everyone feared the same small person, the alien queen's young daughter, the royal child with glowing silver eyes and a scream that could shake walls. 15 nannies had tried to care for her in only 2 months, and all 15 had failed. Some quit, some cried. Some ran away. Some fainted. One even jumped out a window into a pond to escape. No one wanted to be number 16. The alien queen, tall and powerful, sat on her throne with a cold face. Her crown shined like a blade, and her voice always sounded like a command. She ruled planets, armies, and entire star systems. But she could not rule one tiny girl. Her own daughter. The child threw food, bit ankles, kicked guards, ripped curtains, and smashed furniture. She never slept, never smiled, and never listened. The queen ordered the palace to keep searching for another nanny. But no one wanted to try anymore. Far below the throne room, a human janitor cleaned the shiny crystal floors. His name was Ethan, a quiet man with tired eyes. He had once been a father, but his young daughter had passed away years ago. Since then, he worked simple jobs, spoke little, and lived alone. The aliens only allowed humans to do low work like cleaning, polishing, fixing pipes, and carrying boxes. Ethan did not mind. He never complained. He swept floors, picked up broken things, and stayed invisible. The guards barely looked at him. The nobles pretended he did not exist, but Ethan noticed things. He noticed the fear in the servants' steps. He noticed the sound of crashes from the royal nursery. He noticed the queen's voice yelling orders every day. He noticed how everyone trembled when the princess screamed. He never saw the child, but he heard the chaos, and he wondered why a small girl could cause so much terror. One morning, the palace shook with another loud crash. Servants gasped. Guards rushed. A nanny ran down the hall crying and holding her arm, which had small bite marks. "I quit," she shouted, shaking. "I will not die for this job." The queen roared in anger. Another failure. Another weakling. Her voice echoed through marble walls. No one answered. No one dared. Ethan quietly continued, sweeping. A guard pointed a finger at him and warned, "Stay away from the royal wing. Humans are not allowed near the princess. If you go near her, the queen will have your head." Ethan nodded. He kept sweeping. But fate did not care about rules. Later that day, a small crystal ball rolled across the hallway floor and stopped at Ethan's foot. He bent down and picked it up. It was a toy, a child's toy. When he looked up, he saw her. The princess, small, pale, with silver eyes and tangled hair. She stood alone in the hallway, staring at him. The guards froze. Servants hid behind doors. No one breathed. The princess walked toward Ethan slowly. The guards reached for their weapons. "Do not touch her," one guard warned. Ethan did not move. He just held the toy loosely in his hand. The princess stopped right in front of him. Her eyes were wild, angry, confused, then suddenly soft. She reached out and touched his hand. Then she wrapped her tiny fingers around his and held on, as if she had found something missing. Everyone stared in shock. No one in the palace had ever touched the princess without being attacked. No one had ever stood near her without being hurt. No one had ever made her calm. The queen appeared at the end of the hallway, her face fierce and unreadable. Her gaze went from her daughter to the human janitor. The air turned heavy. The guards stepped back. The servants shook. The queen spoke slowly, dangerously. "Explain. Why my child is holding your hand?" Ethan did not know what to say. He simply bowed his head and whispered, "She looked like she needed someone." The princess tightened her grip. Refusing to let go, the palace had never seen anything like it, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The hallway stayed frozen in silence as the alien queen stared at the strange sight. Her fierce royal daughter, the child who bit warriors and threw furniture at armored guards, was standing quietly with her small hand wrapped around the fingers of a human janitor. The guards did not know whether to attack, shout, or kneel. The servants hid behind pillars, peeking with wide, terrified eyes. No one had ever seen the princess calm. No one had ever seen her choose someone, and certainly not a human. The queen stepped closer, her long cloak sliding across the crystal floor like a shadow. Her voice was low and sharp. "Release her hand," she commanded. But Ethan could not release her even if he wanted to. The princess held him tighter, pressing her face against his arm, hiding like a frightened animal. Her breath trembled. Her body shook. Ethan slowly knelt so he was eye level with her. His movements were gentle, slow, respectful. He spoke softly, the way he used to speak to his own daughter long ago. "It's all right," he whispered. "You're safe." The princess closed her eyes as if those simple words were something she had never heard before. The queen's eyes narrowed. "How dare you speak to the royal heir without permission?" Her tone was cold, but there was confusion behind its confusion she did not want anyone to see. Ethan bowed his head. "Forgive me, Your Majesty. I did not plan this." The queen lifted her chin. "No one plans to touch royal blood and live." Guards, but before she could finish, the princess made a sound. Not a scream. Not a growl. A small, frightened whimper. She clung to Ethan's shirt with both hands. The queen stopped speaking. The guards froze. Everyone stared. The queen waved her guards back, her voice shaking just a little. "Bring them to the observation chamber." The guards obeyed, but carefully. They surrounded Ethan, but they did not touch him. The princess walked beside him, still gripping his hand, her steps small and uncertain. Servants whispered as they passed, "How is she calm? Is he magic? He must be tricking her. No human should be this close." The queen heard every whisper, and each one stabbed her pride. The most powerful ruler in the galaxy could not soothe her own child, but a human janitor could. Impossible, unacceptable, suspicious inside the observation chamber. The walls turned transparent, allowing the queen and her advisors to watch from behind mirrored glass. The princess stayed close to Ethan, hiding behind his leg when she heard footsteps. Ethan sat down slowly on the velvet seat and offered her the crystal toy he still held. She reached for it, hesitated, then crawled into his lap and curled up like a tired kitten. Within minutes, she fell asleep. Her breathing softened. Her face relaxed. The palace had never seen the princess asleep without screaming first. The queen stared, her expression cracking for the first time. "This makes no sense," she whispered. Her advisors rushed to explain it away. "He bewitched her. He carries human contagion. He must be trying to gain the throne. He should be executed." But the queen did not answer them. She kept watching. Her daughter's small fingers clung to Ethan's shirt even in sleep. The sight made something twist inside her chest. Something she had buried years ago. Something she refused to name. After an hour, Ethan gently shifted, trying not to wake the girl. She opened her eyes, looked up at him, and instead of screaming, she reached up and touched his face. Ethan smiled, not a big smile, but a soft, tired one. The kind a father gives a child who needs comfort. The queen felt heat rise behind her eyes. She blinked it away. She stepped into the room, alone. The guards stayed outside. The princess sat up, nervous, but Ethan placed a hand on her back. "It's okay," he said softly. Your mother is here." The princess trembled, torn between fear and curiosity. The queen's fingers twitched as if she wanted to reach out but did not know how. She had no idea how to comfort. No idea how to touch gently. No idea how to be a mother anymore. Her voice came out strained. "How did you do this?" Ethan shook his head. "I didn't do anything special. She just needed someone who was not afraid of her." The queen stared at him, searching for lies, tricks, manipulation, but she saw none. Finally, she spoke the words no one imagined she would ever say. "You will stay with her tomorrow. 1 hour. Under guard. Under watch. Prove this was not an accident." The princess reached for Ethan again, refusing to let go. And for the first time in palace history, the queen did not stop her. The next day arrived with heavy tension inside the alien palace. Rumors spread faster than light. Servants whispered in corners. Guards exchanged nervous looks. Advisors sharpened their suspicions. Everyone waited to see if the strange human janitor could calm the royal child Agonor, if the first time had only been luck. The queen sat in her private chamber, pretending to read reports, but her eyes never moved across the page. She was listening for sounds from the royal nursery, listening for screams, listening for chaos, listening for proof that yesterday had been a mistake. But the palace stayed strangely quiet. Ethan stood just inside the royal nursery, unsure of where to put his hands or feet. The room was filled with floating toys, soft glowing walls, and a silver crib shaped like a crescent moon. He felt out of place, like a stain on a perfect surface. 2 guards stood by the door, watching him like hawks. A hidden camera blinked from the wall. He knew the queen was watching. He could almost feel her eyes. The princess sat on the floor at a distance, staring at him. Her silver eyes were wide and unsure. Her small hands twisted the edge of her blanket. She looked like she wanted to approach, but didn't know how. Ethan slowly sat down on the carpet, lowering himself to her level. "You don't have to come if you don't want to," he said softly. "I'll just sit here." His voice carried warmth, simple, calm, steady. The princess blinked, confused by the lack of fear. No one ever spoke to her without shaking. No one ever sat close without armor. She crawled forward a little, then stopped. Ethan did not move. He just smiled gently and placed a wooden ball on the floor. The princess touched it, rolled it back toward him, then crawled closer. Soon she was sitting beside him, leaning against his arm like a tiny shadow. The guards stared. The hidden camera zoomed. The queen, watching from the other room, forgot to breathe. Ethan noticed something then. The princess flinched when a guard coughed. She jolted when the floating light flickered. She covered her ears when a distant door closed. She was not wild. She was scared. Terrified of sounds, movement, eyes, expectations. She wasn't violent by nature. She was protecting herself. Ethan spoke in a low voice meant only for her. "You're not angry, are you? You're just lonely." The princess's eyes filled with tears. She crawled into his lap and hid her face in his shirt, shaking. Ethan wrapped an arm around her, gentle and slow, like holding something fragile. He remembered the nights when his own daughter cried after thunderstorms. He remembered how warmth could stop fear better than force. The princess stopped trembling, and then she spoke. Just one small word, raspy and unsure. "Da." The guards gasped. The queen stood up so fast, her chair fell behind her. The princess tried the word again, clearer this time. "Dad." Ethan froze. His heart thudded painfully. He had not heard that word in years, not since the day he lost his little girl. The sound cut through him, soft and sharp at the same time. He swallowed, trying to stay calm. He did not want to frighten the princess or give the queen a reason to hate him. "I'm not your dad," he whispered kindly. "But I'm here." The princess shook her head and held on to him tighter, refusing to let go. The guards looked horrified. They whispered among themselves, "This is dangerous. This is forbidden. She cannot choose a human." The queen entered the room, her steps fast and uneven. The princess stiffened but did not release Ethan. The queen opened her mouth to command, to correct, to restore order, but no words came. She stared at her daughter's face. The girl was calm, safe, breathing softly. No rage, no fear. No screaming. Ethan stood slowly, holding the princess so she wouldn't fall. He bowed his head to the queen. "She needs kindness," he said quietly. "Not soldiers, not rules, not fear." The queen felt a crack inside her chest again. A memory threatened to surface: small hands, soft laughter. A child she once held before tragedy stole everything. She pushed the memory away, but her voice trembled when she spoke. "You will return tomorrow," she ordered. And the next day, and the next. The guards stared in shock. Ethan nodded. The queen looked at her daughter, then at the human holding her. For the first time, she wondered if the real danger was not the human at all but what he was awakening inside her. The days that followed changed the rhythm of the palace. Where there had once been screams and broken furniture, now there was quiet breathing, soft humming, and small, sleepy footsteps. Every morning, Ethan arrived at the royal nursery. Every morning, the princess reached for him the moment she saw him. And every morning, the palace staff watched, in shock as the impossible continued to happen. But peace in the nursery did not mean peace in the palace's whispers began to spread like poison. He is controlling the princess. He wants power. He is using human tricks. No human should touch the royal heir. Nobles looked down on him from balconies. Advisors stared with cold eyes. Guards tightened their grips on their weapons whenever he passed. Even servants, who once ignored him, now moved away, afraid that being near him might get them punished. Ethan felt the pressure growing each day, but he stayed calm for the princess. She trusted him, and that trust was the only shield he had. The queen pretended not to notice the talk, but she heard everything. She heard nobles complaining in the council chamber. She heard generals warn of political danger. She heard advisors tell her that a human becoming close to royal blood would make her look weak. She sat on her throne with a hard expression, but her fingers always tightened when someone insulted Ethan. She hated that reaction. She did not understand it. She did not want to feel it. But she could not stop it. Meanwhile, the princess began to change. She no longer broke toys. She no longer screamed until her throat hurt. She no longer stayed awake through the night, shaking with fear. She began to laugh, small and quiet, like she was learning the sound. She pointed at things and looked to Ethan for approval. She followed him like a shadow, holding the edge of his shirt. She even started eating again as long as he sat beside her. The palace watched, and the palace panicked. One evening, as Ethan left the nursery, 2 guards blocked his path. Their faces were cold and unfriendly. "You are to report to the security hall," one said. "Why?" Ethan asked calmly. "You are suspected of carrying forbidden human chemicals." Ethan frowned. "I have nothing like that." They did not listen. They dragged him through the halls, past staring servants and whispering nobles. They searched his cleaning bag and dumped everything onto the floor: brushes, cloths, soap, tools. And then one guard reached inside and lifted a small metallic capsule. "There," he said loudly. "Proof." Ethan stared at it. He had never seen it before. The guards smirked, waiting for fear. But Ethan did not panic. "Check the cameras," he said simply. "You will see who placed it there." The guards hesitated. They were not expecting confidence. They took the capsule and marched away, whispering angrily. Ethan returned to his small worker room, tired but calm. He knew someone wanted him gone. He knew someone feared what the princess was becoming with him. He knew danger was rising like storm clouds. Hours later, the Queen summoned the guards. She had watched the camera footage herself. She saw a noble advisor slip the capsule into Ethan's bag while he cleaned. The Queen's face turned dark with fury. "You dare frame someone in my palace?" she said, her voice shaking with rage. The advisor fell to his knees, begging. "Forgive me, Your Majesty. I only wish to protect the throne." The Queen leaned close, her eyes sharp as blades. "You fear a human janitor more than you fear your own queen. Pathetic." She dismissed him with a punishment too quiet for others to hear but strong enough that the advisor went pale and staggered away. Later that night, the Queen stood outside the nursery door. She watched Ethan sitting on the floor while the princess slept against his shoulder. He did not look like a threat. He did not look like a schemer. He looked like a father who had lost too much, and a child who had finally found peace. The Queen felt something shift inside her chest. Again, not fear, not anger, something else, something dangerous, something she could not name. She turned to leave, but before she walked away, she quietly ordered the guards, "No one touches him. No one accuses him. No one goes near him without my command." The guards bowed, but even the Queen did not know that protecting him would soon cost her more than pride. It would cost her the entire empire. The palace felt different after the failed attempt to frame Ethan. The nobles grew quieter. The guards grew more cautious, and the servants watched the Queen with new fear. Everyone sensed a shift, but no one understood it. They only knew one thing: the Queen had protected a human. And that had never happened in the history of the empire. Ethan continued spending time with the princess each day. Their bond grew stronger, natural, effortless. She followed him, trusted him, and relaxed in his presence. She no longer reacted to every sound like a frightened animal. She no longer broke objects to defend herself. She no longer shook in dark corners. Instead, she leaned against Ethan, played softly with toys, and sometimes even smiled. But the Queen watched these changes with a heavy heart. She stood behind observation glass, unseen, her cold expression hiding a storm inside. Every time she saw her daughter resting peacefully in Ethan's arms, something old and buried moved inside her, something she had sworn to erase long ago. One afternoon, when the princess finally fell asleep, Ethan gently laid her in her silver bed. He stepped outside the nursery, tired but calm. As he turned, he found the Queen standing there, close, silent, watching him with unreadable eyes. Ethan bowed. "Your Majesty?" The Queen did not speak at first. She studied him, the way he breathed, the way he stood, the quiet sadness that never left his eyes. Finally, she said, "You understand her." Ethan nodded softly. "She's afraid, not angry." The Queen's jaw tightened. "Fear is weakness." Ethan looked at her carefully. "Fear is pain." The Queen flinched, as if struck. No one spoke to her like that. No one dared. But somehow, she did not punish him. She looked away, staring into the distance where no one could see her expression. "She was not born like this," the Queen said quietly. "She changed after I lost someone." Ethan felt the air shift. The Queen never spoke of personal things. Not to nobles. Not to generals. Not to anyone. He spoke gently. Someone close. The Queen's voice grew thin. Her brother. "My firstborn heir. He died when she was still in her cradle. I blamed myself. I blamed the stars. I blamed the universe. She closed her eyes, and then she began to cry. Every night, every hour. I could not hold her without remembering him. So I stopped holding her. Ethan understood. It was not cruelty, it was grief. A grief so deep that it froze everything around it. She thought you didn't want her. Ethan said softly. The Queen's breath shook. I did not know how to love her without breaking. They stood in silence. Heavy, painful, human silence. Ethan spoke again, voice calm and steady. She doesn't need perfection. She needs warmth. The Queen looked at his face, searching for mockery, but found none. Only honesty. Only experience. Only someone who had also lost a child. You speak like you know, she whispered. Ethan's eyes lowered. I do. I had a daughter once. The words tasted like salt and memory. She died young. I could not save her. The Queen stared at him for a long moment. For the first time, she saw him not as a janitor, not as a human. Not as a servant, but as someone who carried the same wound she did. That shared pain formed an invisible bridge between them before either of them could speak again. The princess woke and toddled to the doorway. She rubbed her eyes and reached for Ethan, not the Queen. The Queen's face tightened not with anger this time, but with something far more vulnerable. Ethan knelt and lifted the princess gently. She rested her head on his shoulder. The Queen watched, her eyes softening against her will. Then something unexpected happened. The princess reached out her tiny hand toward the Queen, hesitant. Small, trembling. The Queen froze. Her fingers twitched, unsure. Ethan leaned closer and whispered, "She wants you." The Queen swallowed, fear flickering in her eyes for the first time in years. Slowly, awkwardly, she lifted her hand and touched her daughter's head. It was a stiff touch, unsure, but the princess leaned into it. The Queen gasped. Her daughter accepted her after all this time. Ethan stepped back, letting them stay connected. The Queen kept her hand there, gentle and shaken. Then, with a voice barely above breath, she said, "Teach me how to be her mother." Those words struck the palace like a silent earthquake. At that moment, the future of the empire changed, but something else was changing too, something the Queen did not notice. Yet, someone was listening. Someone who wanted the throne. Someone who would not allow a human to reshape the royal bloodline. The palace began to change, slowly at first, then all at once. The servants no longer walked with fear. The guards lowered their weapons when passing the nursery. Even the long, echoing halls sounded different, softer, warmer, alive. The princess now laughed, a small, shy sound that bounced through the corridors like sunlight. She slept through the night for the first time in her life. She ate meals without throwing plates. She no longer hid in corners. She held Ethan's hand and walked beside him, trusting him completely. But it was the Queen who changed the most, every day. She watched Ethan show her how to hold her daughter, how to speak gently, how to be near without pressure. At first, her movements were stiff, unsure, unnatural. But little by little, her hand stopped trembling. Her voice softened when she said her daughter's name. She even learned to sit on the floor, lowering herself from her throne-like posture. Letting her child crawl into her lap, the palace staff stared in disbelief. The Queen is smiling. She never smiles. The child is touching her. This cannot be real. But while some watched in awe, others watched in anger. The nobles gathered in secret rooms, whispering poison into each other's ears. The Queen has become weak. She chooses her daughter over the empire. She allows a human to guide her. This is a disgrace to our bloodline. Their voices grew louder. Their resentment sharpened. Their plans began to form. Meanwhile, the princess grew braver each day. She played near windows, wandered short distances, and even pointed at the stars beyond the glass. Ethan told her stories about Earth's simple ones, gentle ones, stories his own daughter once loved. The princess listened, eyes wide, as if she was collecting pieces of a world she had never known. One afternoon, as the queen watched Ethan lift the princess into the air, the child laughed a bright, ringing laugh that filled the room. The queen felt tears sting her eyes. She turned away, wiping them fast, refusing to let anyone see. But Ethan had seen. He pretended not to, offering her dignity she had been denied for years. Later, the queen called a private council meeting. Nobles, advisors, generals, everyone with power stood before her. The queen looked down at them with steady eyes. From this day forward, she announced, Ethan will serve as royal guardian to the princess. Gasps filled the chamber. A noble shouted, a human cannot hold a royal title. Another barked, he will corrupt the air. A general slammed his hand against the table. The empire will lose respect. The queen raised her hand, silencing them all. My daughter is alive because of him, she said. My daughter sleeps because of him. My daughter smiles because of him. If you value the empire, you must value the child who will one day rule it. The nobles exchanged furious looks. Their pride could not tolerate this. Their arrogance could not bend. Their hatred burned hotter. They bowed to the queen's face, but behind her back, they began to gather allies. That night, Ethan walked through the garden with the princess holding his hand and the queen walking beside them. The air was cool, the stars bright. For a moment, it felt like a family, peaceful and ordinary. But shadows moved behind marble pillars. Eyes watched from the dark, back inside. The queen spoke quietly to Ethan. You have changed my daughter. Ethan shook his head. She changed because she was ready. She only needed someone to see her. The queen looked at him with a strange softness. And what do you need, Ethan? He hesitated. I only need her to feel safe. The queen studied him, seeing the truth in his eyes. No ambition. No manipulation. No hunger for power. Only care. Only memory. Only loss. But before she could speak again, the doors to the hall burst open. A breathless guard fell to one knee. Your Majesty, he gasped. There is a council vote scheduled at dawn. The nobles are calling it a removal hearing. The queen's eyes hardened. Removal of what? The guard swallowed. Removal of you. The room went cold. The princess clung to Ethan's leg, sensing danger. Ethan lifted her into his arms, holding her close. The queen looked at them both, the only two beings in the universe who touched her heart. Her voice dropped into a dark, dangerous whisper. Then they will learn what happens when they threaten my child. The night before the council vote felt heavy and dangerous inside the palace. The halls were too quiet. The guards stood too stiff. The air felt like it was waiting for something to break. Ethan stayed close to the princess, holding her small hand as she rested against his chest. She sensed the tension. Her silver eyes searched every corner, every shadow, every doorway. The queen paced in her private chamber, her long cloak brushing the floor like a restless storm. Her advisors begged her to negotiate, to step back, to remove the human before the nobles removed her. Give up the janitor, one whispered. Send him away, another urged. Show strength, a third insisted. Choose the empire. The queen's eyes burned. My daughter is the empire. But the advisors did not understand. They backed away, bowing, planning to vote against her anyway. The queen stood alone, except for one thought that kept returning. Unwanted and unstoppable, Ethan had given her daughter life again. As dawn approached, the princess refused to sleep. She clung to Ethan's shirt, trembling, sensing danger the way frightened animals do. Ethan stroked her hair gently. "It's all right," he whispered. "I'm here." But even he did not know if that promise could last. When the council bell rang, the queen entered the grand chamber. The nobles sat in a circle, their robes decorated with symbols of power. The generals stood with hands on their swords. The council leader raised his voice. "We gather to decide the future of the empire," he declared. "The queen has become unfit to rule. She is influenced by a human. She has abandoned tradition. She has placed the heir in danger. We call for her removal." Gasps echoed through the chamber, but before the queen could speak, the doors burst open. Ethan stood there, holding the princess in his arms. The guards tried to stop him, but the princess screamed a sharp, frightened cry that cut through the hall. Everyone froze. It was the first scream she had made in weeks, but this scream was not wild. It was protective. It was warning. The queen's eyes widened. "Why did you bring her here?" "She woke and wouldn't let go," Ethan said. "She knew something was wrong." The nobles hissed with disgust. "A human carries the heir. This is shame. This is corruption." The princess heard their voices. She looked at their angry faces. She pressed herself against Ethan, shaking. Then something unexpected happened. She lifted her head and spoke loudly, clearly, for all to hear. "Safe." The chamber fell silent. She pointed at Ethan. "Safe." Then she pointed at the nobles. "Scary." The nobles stared, speechless. The queen stepped forward, her voice strong and sharp. "You call him corruption," she said. "But he is the only reason my daughter can speak. He is the only reason she sleeps. He is the only reason she laughs. You say he weakens us. I say he saved us." The council leader slammed his staff. "He is still human." The queen stepped beside Ethan and placed a hand on her daughter's back. "And so is compassion," she replied. "And so is healing. And so is love." The chamber shook with murmurs, fear, uncertainty. The nobles tried to rally. "This is emotional weakness." But then the princess reached out, placing her tiny hand in the queen's, and with a trembling voice, she said, "Family." The word echoed like a command from the stars themselves. The guards lowered their weapons. The generals hesitated. The council leader, Stuttered. Never in history had the royal heir spoken in the council chamber. The queen stood tall, stronger than ever. "If anyone wishes to remove me," she said, "step forward." No one moved. Not a single noble, not a single general, not a single advisor. The queen turned to Ethan, meeting his eyes not as a ruler, not as a superior, but as someone who understood his grief and shared it. "You changed more than my daughter," she said softly. "You changed me." Ethan swallowed, unsure how to answer. He had never wanted power, titles, or respect. He only wanted the princess to feel safe. The queen stepped closer. "Stay," she said, quietly. "Not as a janitor, not as a servant, as part of her life. And mine." The princess wrapped her arms around both of them, smiling a real smile, warm and bright. The council watched. Defeated, the guards bowed. The empire shifted, for the first time. The palace felt like a home, and as the scene faded, the final image remained: a queen no longer alone, a child no longer afraid, a human no longer forgotten, a family unexpected, impossible, and stronger than the galaxy.